Mine?
Mine.
Oh, okay.
I'm plugging my camera here.
Okay.
And anytime.
Kevin, this movie takes such an unflinching look at race. And you have said, let's back up. You are a grandfather who is taking care of a biracial child. Your wife, your daughter has died, and you become locked in a custody battle with the black family, who is your son-in-law's family. Why this story? Why did you feel you had to tell this now?
Well, it wasn't, I had to tell it now. I mean, I think you have to deal with the things that are right in front of you. I mean, sometimes we're managing so many crises, you know, but then we're forced to deal with what's in front of you right now. And for me, as an actor, this script came to me, and I read it, and I was confronted with so much truth and so much kind of pain and so much, you know, love. There's all those things that are in this screenplay, and when I was done, it had really held its line, and I said, oh my God, I think I have to make this, and promised the director that we would. I just felt that it was a movie of our time, and that's important to me. I mean, I don't know what I'm looking for when I open the page. I try to be a blank slate. So, you know, I mean, this wasn't a movie that was trying to anticipate where we are in this country, both where we are, you know, a lot of people think we're here because of August. And it's just simply not true. But it is of our time, and it spoke to me, and there was language in it that I've had trouble coming up with myself that I actually believed in. And so getting it made became a priority to me for whatever reason, and the subject matter that seemed to bother so many people didn't bother me at all. The language that seemed to bother so many people didn't bother me at all.
Because it's truthful.
Well, I just felt that if you're going to look at something, you have to do it in the most authentic way, which gives you the best chance to reconcile.
You said about this project, Black or White, that it doesn't look backward, it looks forward in an authentic way. What does that mean?
Well, I think I make movies, so I'm not a spokesman for, you know, where we're at in this world. I'm a spokesman for what moves me, and I think will translate to other people. And sometimes if we're going to deal with this idea of race, we have a tendency to look backwards and look at historical movies. Selma, for instance, or For the Butler, or 12 Days a Slave. We're looking back at that awful, formidable time. This movie is a look at kind of really where we're at today in terms of race relations. So that's what I meant by I wasn't looking back, taking on a negative connotation. It was just because it's so hard. We don't want to talk about it today. We can talk about it in terms of history, and we can see that that's bad. But we don't want to see that, you know, that how far we actually have come
along
or haven't come. You know, and so when you get down to that, you realize, oh my God, we still are dealing with this, and we are.
Do you think race is misused in the country today? That it rears its head at times when it isn't called for, when it's not?
I think it can be. Sure, anything can be. You know, anybody can use something to an advantage to either inflate or incite. But the problems are real. The veil over you know, blacks in this country is real. You know, the historically how this started, how this was manipulated, and where we find ourselves, and when you layer on everything, you know, with, you know, crowded cities and people looking for work, and that veil never goes away. And for anybody that thinks, you know, oh, let's just get over it, can't you, and move forward. Well, that's half the medicine. We have to move forward. But just callously saying, let's get over it, means you're just not taking, I think, an empathetic look at what has to be overcome and what is actually real. Because there are people out there dealing things every day that you don't deal with because of the color of your skin.
You put $9 million of your own money into this project.
Yeah, it's kind of, it might not total out to 9. It was real close.
You'll feel it now. You'll feel it later when you go counting up the taxes. Why did you decide to invest that much money in a movie? You should know better.
Yeah.
Movies are...
It's not the first time that I've done this. And you know, I live, the architecture of my life is such that when I see something and I want to do it and there's nobody that's willing to stand with me, I do it myself. I don't know why that is, and you're half right. I shouldn't be doing that. That's not my job description. I'm not a bank. But I can't fall out of love with something. And just because someone renders something either a little, well, it's kind of dangerous, or how are you going to get this? My overwhelming urge to share something that I think inform me and can help people is what drives me in the movies. I would have not made Field of Dreams. I wouldn't have made Dances with Wolves. And Dances with Wolves, I had to go into my pocket. So it's not something foreign to me.
I love that entrepreneurial risk-taking. That's really at the center of what you do. I mean, everything you do.
Yeah, it has been. I think that I haven't lived a life trying to make my pile get bigger. I've been blessed. I didn't know that some of the great things were going to happen to me, but I'm still pretty young at heart. I love the idea of, hey, what if? What if we could make this work? What if this could work? And it's like, come on, guys, what if it could work? I mean, I take a solid look at things, not a naive, not a childlike
But you
look
don't
at them.
repeat yourself.
But my enthusiasms are high for things that I believe in.
Well, you promised Mike Binder as
Yeah.
well, your writer-director on this project, that you would do this movie. I didn't realize it was based on something that happened in his own life.
Yes.
How rooted was it to what his
Well, it was pretty
experience
rooted.
was?
I mean, the only difference, he had his sister's sister, his wife's sister, got a blood transfusion when she was 31, back in the day when AIDS was really running high and still running high. And she lost her life. She had a biracial baby that then her own sister decided to help raise, along with the family of the young man who wasn't going to be in the life of the child. So Reggie is probably the realest character in the movie. The truth of the real story is that there was no acrimony there. They were not angry at each other. And they helped to raise this child, and now is 34 years old and very well adjusted. But Mike thought that this was a real potential to have a way to look at race, how we deal with each other, and how we need each other, and coming together and joining forces for the good of a child was not only possible, but was the right thing to do.
How did you prepare to play Elliot? I mean, this is a lawyer. He's a heavy drinker. I know you're not. He's also a man he obviously has a heart for this child, but he's a driven guy who goes out and gets what he needs when he needs it and when he wants it.
Yeah, well, you want to draw characters that you recognize. I mean, that's why we go to the movies, to see ourselves. If we don't see ourselves, we start to dismiss them. We maybe drift off into fantasy. And those movies have their place and their value. And, the romantic comedy, which we know is just, it's structured, and we never fall out of love with it. And the Western and the political thriller, you can go right down the list. But there are these movies where we realize at some point we are looking at ourselves. We're looking at our society. And at that moment, the more authentic you can be, the more honest you can be with who these characters are, how they're layered, because we are complicated, broken people.
Yeah.
And we still manage to go to work. We still look sharp. And then you go away, and people don't know that maybe your heart's on the ground.
Right.
And these people all have to deal with this.
There's this veneer, though, that cloud between Elliot and everybody because of the drinking that you maintain through a lot of this movie. And it becomes its own obstacle. How did you build that in? I mean, it's a very layered, subtle, it's not a broad drunk.
Yeah.
It's really layered. What did you do? What did Binder do to get you there?
Well, I wanted to be honest with it and not shirk away from it.
Yeah.
You could tell he was, even on the park bench, he can't
Right.
get his words out right.
Yeah.
But professional drunks have to get through their day. And so they have tricks, and I had to find those tricks myself to negotiate and to be in front of people and not let that overtake. That the mornings were way too early. You could see that he was exhausted, but the man is dealing with the loss of his lifelong partner and his daughter.
Yeah.
So we also understand the pain that he's living in, and now the last connection to those two women is now going to be in doubt, the custody of this little grandchild. So he begins to have to fight for his life, and then lawyers get involved.
Always a bad sign.
Well, you know, I have to say that, you know, they are the butt of a lot of jokes. I've needed lawyers in my life to help protect me, but I also need lawyers to be more of a soft backboard. Sometimes they're like a tip of a spear. And my lawyer that has helped me in my life is a soft backboard. You know, if I'm angry or something like that, he goes, well, let's just think about this, you know. And I appreciate that as opposed to some kind of attack dog.
I was really, this is, you were getting hailed, not only by me, but by many people, this as one of the greatest performances of your career. It's layered, it's subtle, it's very moving, certainly by the end. You have called yourself an emotional detective when you approach a role. What does that mean?
Well, you know, you're asked so many things and you grab these words and now they're being thrown back at you. I'll live with that. I read the words and then I try to read between the lines, you know, because I know behavior. You know, I understand what loss is and pain and I've seen dysfunction, and so I look for those things and I look how they can fit in this screenplay because, you know, my job as an actor is to become seamless for the person who's watching. You know, I know I have my name. I've been in movies, and at a certain point, you know, the hope is that you just quit watching me and you watch Elliot, and I never go away. But what happens is that character takes over, and I think being an emotional detective, looking for these opportunities, actually suddenly, boy, if you hit enough dots, people are in with you. They trust you.
There is a humility and a real sense of stoic pride in these characters that you've portrayed over many, many years. As I read your biography, as I started researching you, your father, William, played a big role in your life. You talk about him as your teacher. What did he teach you? What are you trying to teach us that he gave you?
Well, you know, the thing in life too is don't get caught trying to teach. You know, you know, what you watch is, I watched my father, I watched his behavior. I watched his behavior when no one was looking. That's a mark of things. My dad was a Billy from Oklahoma. You know, you might look for the elegant way of saying Bill, William. It wasn't. He was Billy with a Y. And he was Oklahoma tough. And you know, my dad's focus was on me. He came out of the Dust Bowl. He saw men out of work. He saw his father out of work, and so he took one job and he never let go of it. He worked with that company his whole life, and he probably missed certain opportunities, but it was so much on his mind that it could all go away. And when you see it all taken away from you, it marks you, and it certainly informed my dad. So he was a no nonsense kind of person, and about, you know, to hold a job, you have to outwork everyone. Right. And that's just a, I know that sounds so simple, but it's you know, what he's saying is you don't be late. You work, you do extra things. And, you know, my dad, there was plenty of times he worked for the Edison Company, and it means when the wires go down in giant storms, and sometimes he'd be gone 2 or 3 days, like 48 hours, 72 hours straight of climbing poles in the rain and doing things, and he'd come home and the phone would ring and they'd want him to go again, and my mom would say, don't answer that phone. You know, they can get somebody else, you know, because all the other men, and he goes, no. He says, well, he'll go. And I could hear these conversations as a child. So I understood, you know, his psyche, and that couldn't help but somehow bleed over into me. He was a person that would go.
Yeah, and his work ethic.
Yeah, because he would say, look, if they don't call me, they're going to call somebody else. And in that instance, he wasn't so much worried about his job. He just knew other guys were tired.
Yeah. As I look at your career, that ethos really characterizes it. And I want to talk about some of the other things you're involved in, from machines to separate oil from water, something very near and dear to my heart, to a book you're working on. This didn't happen all at once for you.
No,
it took its time.
I didn't, you know, a lot of people either have a connection in Hollywood, knew they were going to do it for a long time, have family. I didn't have any of that. And I came to this late, in my last year of college. I had always been performance oriented, so when I look back in my life, I know, trained classically on piano. I was raised in the church. My grandmother played the piano. My mom and her sister were in the choir, and I certainly was in all the Christmas things. I was always a shepherd, you know, looking for the star. And,
Grabbing the robe?
you know, and the thing falling across my face and missing my cue. My dad said, you need to pay attention and quit messing around. You know, if you're going to be a shepherd, be one. And I was like, oh, I always was in trouble in church. Always. I was always, you know, I loved church, but that's where I got in trouble because I think I played too much.
Well, you talked at Whitney Houston's funeral about that was your connection, really, because you both grew up in the Baptist church.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a spine for so many of these characters and the choices you've made coming out of that experience?
I don't know. But certainly how I grew up informed me, you know. You were asking me.
I asked you about how this didn't happen at once.
Career. And so it didn't, you know, and so I didn't like just burst onto the scene. Once I knew that I wanted to be an actor, I actually went back into really educating myself. I became the thing that I knew I wasn't, which was I became a good student. I wasn't good in school, but I was thirsty, I was hungry, and it was the first time that when I would learn something, I could just build on it naturally and not just have to remember it for Monday.
Well, there was a decisive turning point. You're on a plane from Puerto Vallarta,
yeah,
and you run into Richard Burton.
Yeah.
What did he tell you?
Well, it wasn't as decisive as it's been made out to be. It's just kind of almost become urban legend. But I did see him, and I was at that moment really thinking about becoming an actor, and I wanted desperately to talk to him, and he had bought about 4 seats on a plane. I thought to keep people away, but I'm so dumb. I thought, well, hell, I could get right next to him, you know. And when I did, it was like, God, the one guy on a plane that doesn't get it. But I was very young, and he tolerated that, and we had a discussion that I'll keep to myself. But at the end of it, it was important somehow that I met him. And the sad part for me on that is I never got to see him again. I would have loved to have had some kind of conversation.
What was the tenor of the conversation, if not the content?
No.
Was it about acting? Was it about life?
No, it was about trying to be a good man because my mom had talked about him and said, you know, this guy, you know, he said, you know, these Hollywood people have these tortured lives. And I don't know if my mom knew in some way that I was going to one day do this, but I remember her talking about how hard their lives were. And so I had a conversation with him. Do you think you can have a life in the movies and not have to have all this stuff? You know, I mean, he could have probably just said, "Hey, go back to your seat."
Right.
And it was about that. We just had our own kind of little conversation. It was very short, about 10 minutes, and then he was gone, and I didn't get to close that circle.
It's a great story, though, and I love that you had that moment with him. And he was a great actor right up until the end. Tell me about. I want to return to this thing about the church and your faith. Does your faith guide your work at all? I see a thread running through all of these projects, from Field of Dreams to Dances with Wolves, a love of humanity, a pride in humanity almost, that runs clear through to this project. Do you see that?
Yeah, well, my faith gets tested like everybody, you know. I mean, there's times when I think I'm a pretty big shot, or I think I'll just can manage something, and suddenly I can't, and suddenly things start to fall down, and I don't know how to pick myself up. Because I am an entrepreneur, I take big cuts at life, and I think, why didn't this work? You know, and there are moments when, you know, I'm doing so much thinking that I don't put trust in the thing that I know that really has guided my life, because I know this didn't happen by accident. I know I'm the one that got up in the morning. I know I'm the one that tried to outthink stuff and did these things. But I've had a pretty magical life, and you just have to be kind of an ass to think that it was just because it's just you. Right. You know, there has been something over me, and I'm not capable of always talking about what that is, but I do know my life and my children have had you know, listen, I pray for one thing in my life.
You pray?
I pray for one thing in my life. I do. I pray that I'm the one that gets to raise my children. I just don't want anybody else to have that opportunity. I have a 4, a 5, and a 7. And so to me, it's not about any of these things that my ego would want, because I want to continue to make movies.
No, you want the Oscar, you want the
those things would be nice. I'm not immune to that. But if I have a wish, you know, a wish is a prayer in a way, whatever. It's like I want to be the people to teach them. and that's it. The list doesn't go on. You know, I mean, I could about health and all that stuff, but if I need to focus, it's the protection of them.
Well, that is to be expected.
You don't want to give that
see
opportunity to somebody else.
No, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about the diversity of the things you're involved in. You're building these machines that separate oil from water. BP used some of them during the big spill down in the Gulf. You're writing a book now that is being portrayed as sort of a family-friendly book. What is this? Why run in so many directions?
Well,
You've got to have a pile of scripts when you get home waiting for
it's
you.
not so many directions. There's some things I don't know how to do my computer, but I can hold on to these bigger kind of things and devote a level of time to them that kind of can distill them down, and I can work on them. And it seems it's not effortless, but it doesn't tax me. I like working on things, and the water, the use of water, the spills that continue to happen around the world. We didn't have a big effect on the oil spill simply because we came to it too late, and we're not really having an effect on it now because oil companies simply haven't moved that direction. They still want to sink the oil.
Right.
They still want to burn it, which is just ridiculous. You know, the idea is you take it out of the environment, and I can do that. I know that, and people could say anything they want about discrediting an actor being involved or whatever, but the fact of the matter is I know how to do that better than anybody in the world. Okay, we're not doing it because that's just the way the business isn't mandated
Cheaper
to
do it the other way.
But I haven't. But like everything, you know, I don't give up. I'm pretty dogged. You know, I did that 20 years before. I did it during there. I'm doing it now. I don't give up on things because I know that this business goes forward. And so I have a company that really deals with produced water and how to do that more efficiently so that we preserve water.
Tell me about the Explorers Guild.
The Explorers Guild is I'm a co-writer, not the main writer. It's just a great adventure book, very much in the mold of like a Kipling or Jules Verne. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say things till I see that they're really going that direction. And it's really a fantastic book, and it's one of 4. And it's I'm just really happy to be a part of it and trying to create, you know, a new source material because we have our great classics. And I thought, well, where are our great classics coming from this century? And so my hope, not that it will be, my hope is that when we're done, and it'll be out in the fall, that it can take its place with those books. Will it? I don't know. But every day we work on it, it's with that idea that this book will not only be popular in its time, but will have the weight of being able to travel through time and be appreciated.
Final question, what's the mark you want to leave for your audience, for your family?
You know, I guess if you're talking about my headstone.
I guess.
You know, so maybe
a goal. We call it a goal.
But maybe if somebody looked at my name and saw that and it said, and he made movies too.
Great way to end the interview. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure. Really a pleasure. I'm a huge admirer of your work, and I think Postman is probably one of the most underrated, and that is one that is and will endure because it's got such heart. It was so original and ahead of its time.
Thanks.
Like I think, and this movie.
It's a pretty epic movie.
It's an unbelievable. I mean, and it still speaks, I think, today.
Yeah.
More than it did then, really.
I know.
In some ways. Can we take a quick picture?
Yeah.
And then we'll head out.
No, I love that movie.
It's a fantastic movie. I just showed it to my boys the other day, and they were captivated by it. I thought, you know, some of these things just hang around, even when critics and other people just don't get it.
Yeah, him being a mailman, just a liar.
Turn these lights off.
Get your finger out of my shot. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure, really, and the film is fantastic.
So enjoy the book when it comes out.
Oh, I'm going to be looking for it. Well, you should come back on and talk about it.
Good.
Come back on. We'll talk. We'll definitely do it. That's right. Oh my God, Silverado, Wyatt Earp. Oh my gosh.